Hey y'all.
Hey, how y'all doing?
I hope y'all are well. I'm doing a lot better now, actually. I do severely apologize for the lapse in content. I did not intend to take a 4 month break, but I did. You know what? I'm gonna stand on that. I did. But I'm sorry. And I am gonna try to stop doing that. Life just started lifing. Like, I literally intended to post this, whew, like 4 months ago, to the point where I even bookmarked me talking about this TikTok drama that was literally relevant. And the drama I'm talking about in particular is the one with that one Daisy couple. I don't know if y'all know them. I forgot their names. But I did follow them for a while, but they were engaged and they broke up the engagement because one of them cheated on the other, and that actually hurt me because I did love them. I'm saying I love them, I can't remember their fucking names, that's crazy. But I remember I would like come across their videos every now and then and be like, wow, like there is faith in this world, this beautiful couple. And now that happened. Mind you, again, this was like 4 or 5 months ago at this point, and I have yet to check in, but I will now that I'm talking about it. So when I do, I'll let y'all know. Either way, I'm gonna stop talking, get on to the show, and see you guys later. Also, y'all, I apologize again for the sound. Please bear with me. We are getting better at this. See how you hear me now? And it's like crisp and clear. By next time, it shall be like this. But until then, we are dealing with, the early beginnings of being a solo podcaster. Either way, here's the show. Our second guest is Aria Velz. Most of you may know her from TikTok as the lesbian film girl. If you've ever watched any piece of media with lesbians in it, I assure you, Aria has already done a video on it. She has over 186,000 followers on TikTok and is in a loving marriage with her wife. Aria, welcome to the show.
Super happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, we actually live up a lot closer to each other than I thought. You're located in DC, right?
Indeed. In Alexandria, Virginia.
Okay,
yes.
awesome. I used to frequent Alexandria a lot. I live in Charlottesville.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Virginia, baby.
I'm not from Virginia, so I don't want to claim Virginia, but...
No, respect.
Currently, I'm a Virginia baby, so yes. I also just found out that you're also a theater director.
I am, yes. Yeah, that's my, it's weird to say that's kind of like my day job, but yeah, in a way that's like kind of like my job that I'm doing when I'm not on TikTok.
How's that job like?
So I'm like a freelancer. So I currently right now, it's a lot of like, this is like around the time where a lot of theaters are making their seasons for next year. And so it's a lot of like trying to go to theaters and be like, hey, I'm here. I'd love to direct and such. And so I have like a couple of jobs lined up, but it's a lot of just trying to do the hustle and trying to get some gigs at these theaters. And DC has like a very, very robust theater community, which is really, really lovely. And I've been working here for like 9 years now. So it's a really great community that I've been having a lot of fun with trying to work. And I feel like I'm just now establishing myself as like a director that people know, which has been really cool.
What are your favorite kinds of stage productions you like to do?
I really love genre work. I recently directed a horror play. I think horror is a very underutilized genre in live theater. There's so much potential for unique sensory experiences for the genre. And so I really enjoyed doing that. It was a play, it was a Thai American ghost play about ghost hunting. And I love that. But to me, what also made that play great was that the true story of it was like a family drama between two brothers and like a mother and a son. And I really enjoy plays that explore intergenerational relationships. I think like the generational cycle is something that really gets me going in storytelling, both as an observer and as an artist. And I also really love plays that are gay, something that I also care about. And I try to make that known. Because recently I was talking about with some people that like I'm half Asian, and I recently started to work on a lot of Asian projects, which has been really, really great, very gratifying and satisfying. But I don't get asked to work on a lot of like lesbian or queer projects, which I think is just really interesting as someone who like has made it, for better or for worse, a major part of my personality.
Oh yeah, I imagine. I used to be a theater kid, funny enough, but
So people ignore the call, but we are all theater kids at heart.
I know everyone has that one musical that, like, if you put on that
Yes.
soundtrack, you're singing along. Like, mine's Hairspray. Like, I'm diehard Hairspray lover.
Great show.
I was in the ensemble, so I feel like because I was in it too, I was like, I know everything. Like, yeah, because I was going to mention later that you also have ties. So I imagine working with that tie was also like really just fun to be around.
Yes. It was great. Part of it felt self-imposed pressure because there are not a lot of certainly not a lot of Thai American directors and not a lot of Thai people in the country in general compared to like other Asian groups. And so when I was brought on to this show, I was like, I got to really prove that I am Thai enough to work on this and that like I have enough knowledge and enough buy-in for this. That was something that was certainly like a self-imposed pressure, but something that I really cared about because I don't get to work on a lot of Thai things. And I didn't really grow up with very deep connection to Thai culture. My mom was like very intentional on raising me and my brother with very Americanized. And so it was something that I was like very insecure about for working on this particular show. But I think it was actually a great opportunity to collaborate with my mom in a lot of ways because I could ask her questions and ask her what she thought. And she got like pretty involved in a way that like we had never really been able to do on a production before, which I really liked. And she was like my honorary dramaturg as we called her. So that was really great. Which is not to say that like it was like a super anxiety inducing environment. That was just something in the first couple weeks. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to really prove that like I totally deserve to be here directing this project. But it went really well. And normally I like to downplay everything that I work on, but I was really proud of this show.
Yeah, especially like you mentioned that cultural aspect to it. I guess how have you tried to connect more with your Thai side in recent years?
Yeah.
I know like it's something that I'm very empathetic towards because my family is Haitian, but I am not like fluent in Creole and I don't know as much about Haitian culture as I would like. But I imagine just being in your 20s and older is like your first chance to like actively play a role in that without the influence of your parents.
Right.
So I guess like for you, what has that looked like for you in the past few years?
Yeah. So some of it has just been really trying to connect more with my extended Thai family, like my cousins. I have like cousins and family members who are in the US that I'm talking to more regularly. So just connecting with family has been a lot more meaningful. And then also there are not a lot of Thai people in the US compared to other Asian groups, as I said, but the DC area I think is like the largest actually in the country. So there is still a community here. And so I recently joined like this Thai American community group in DC, trying to attend events and meet more Thai people. And my wife and I really want to try to learn Thai. And my mom and all my Thai family members are like, it's a lost cause. You don't do it. It's impractical. It's really difficult to learn, which I understand, but it is a goal that I would like to have because I do feel like connecting with the language would, even in some ways, would just give me like a better understanding and a different way that I could connect with like my Thai family members. So that's something I'm trying to do. And I think it's been a little more difficult because I'm very, if see my TikTok, I think a lot of people, I think I'm like a very white presenting person. And so sometimes it's like very, how much can I claim Asianness when I don't think a lot of people really read me as Asian. But now I'm kind of more in the mindset of like, well, I am Thai. I want to connect with it, even if I might not look it like that it's still something I really want to do. And I have to try not to be super self-conscious about that.
If it's any consolation, I think you look very Thai. Like I was like,
Thank you.
When I first saw you, I was like, okay, she's either South Asian or she's like Latina. Like those are my two guesses.
Yeah.
And I saw, I was like, okay, I was close.
Yeah, I get Latina the most, especially because my last name is Velz. And so some people will just think my last name is actually Velez and I'm just pronouncing it wrong or something.
Oh, she pronounced your last. Okay, anyways.
I don't know.
But TikTok's not real.
I don't know.
Anyways.
It's very funny because sometimes we'll go into these spaces and it's primarily like Spanish speakers. And so people will come up to me speaking Spanish thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm Latina. And I'm like, I don't know, buddy. And then I turn to my Irish American, Boston raised wife whose literal college major was Spanish literature. And she speaks perfect Spanish to them. And everyone is always so confused. It's very, very funny.
So first off, one thing I do want to point out is I love the spreadsheets, especially as
Thank
someone like
you.
me who wants to know exactly what they're getting into when they watch
Mhm.
something. I couldn't imagine anything better. So, what first sparked the idea to create those spreadsheets?
I had this list of lesbian movies that I started when I was like 16. This really started because one of my dear friends showed me the movie Imagine Me and You, and it was the first time I'd ever seen like a lesbian movie and the first time I'd ever seen like a rom-com and was like, "Oh my gosh, I feel things. I feel connected to this." And so I wanted to watch more movies and eventually I it just became a goal. It just became a goal that I had to watch as many lesbian movies as possible in high school. And eventually I made this document that I would return to on and off for several years after that. And it was just a Word document. But then a pandemic hit. And as I work in theater, not a lot of theater was really going on during the pandemic. And so I started making TikToks about lesbian movies and lesbian media because I needed some creative outlet. And I got a little annoyed that people were talking about the same like 10 lesbian movies out there. And I was like, I've spent years of my life trying to watch all these movies, and none of you know these things. I don't blame the people. Like, obviously, it's not their fault. So I decided to just take my Word document and make it into a giant spreadsheet that could be shareable to people. And I did that over the course of like, I don't know, like a week straight and then shared it. And then a follower of mine was like, "Hey, I love this spreadsheet. Can I turn it into like a database?" And so she like turned it into like a workable database, which has been really great. So it came out of a sense of feeling frustrated that like people today were in the same spot that I was when I was 15 and like having a tough time finding movies that I really wanted to connect with. I don't want people to have to like start from scratch like I did. Like I just want people to like have access to this.
So, literally, just lesbian movies is a Roman Empire.
Really like my main hobby, but I think now I, monetized it. But yeah, it was really my it was my main hobby as a teenager, which I guess is weird, but like, my career is in theater, which some people don't really see as like a career path, which I totally get, but it was just a very interesting career path that then born like interesting hobbies.
And have you been able to track the engagement you've seen on your spreadsheet or database?
Yeah, so it's now on a link tree, and so on the link tree I'm able to see like who clicks on it and who scrolls on it, and I have been like constantly pleasantly surprised by people. It's definitely gotten, like a couple 100,000 views at this point, which has been really really gratifying because again, I just want people to have to like find the movies that they want to find.
No, I've definitely, like I said, like for listeners, I've been following Aria for like a good 2 years now, and I will say like I have looked at that database to look for lesbian films because I
Yeah.
had like a gay movie renaissance when I was like
Mm.
15, but it was with like gay men, and I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm. Of
cool, I want to see the lesbians now. So thank you for like, I feel
course.
like you said, you definitely helped other people who were like, okay, I want to see lesbian movies, more representation.
Yeah.
Like, cool, here's hundreds of movies and TV
Yes.
shows and everything that has to be one.
Truly, truly a dream. Yes.
I've also noticed that you love to do like rapid fire questions. So I have
Yes, I
some
do.
for
Oh
you.
God. Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
Ready.
Best lesbian period piece.
Ugh, best lesbian period piece. Oh, this is hard. This is hard because what I think is what my favorite is not going to be what is really the best. I would say, um, best lesbian period piece. I mean, Portrait of the Lady on Fire is like a very easy go-to. My personal favorite is The World to Come.
Best lesbian movie with a sad ending.
Again, The World to Come, but best lesbian movie with a sad ending. Yeah. I guess I would say The World to Come. Yeah.
A lesbian movie in which there is a large age gap between the two love interests.
Oh, I really enjoy. I think like Carol is like a classic one that people go to, but I also really enjoy. Oh wow, this rapid fire is not going well. I really enjoy. Is it These Walls Could Talk Too? It's hard. Like so, Mädchen in Uniform has like a large age gap, and that's like not necessarily a love story, but that age gap facilitates really interesting you know, a really interesting story about self-discovery that I really like. So I really like that.
An actor you're dying to see play gay.
Oh my God, so many. Recently, I was looking at Emmy nominees and I saw that Jessica Williams, I don't think has played gay yet. I would love to see her play gay. I think she's great. And I think like Carrie Russell is another person I would love to see like play a lesbian. And she's played gay before, but I think it's been too long since like Queen Latifah has played gay. I would really like to see her play gay again because I think her performance in Set It Off, my wife and I still talk about it all the time.
I'm in love with Queen Latifah.
Oh, of
So I
course.
I hear that. Okay. A genre you wish had more lesbian representation.
Oh, fantasy. Absolutely fantasy. I'd say that is the genre most bereft of queer women.
A lesbian movie that everyone loves but you hate.
Oh my God. Oh, this is a good one. A lot of queer women love the movie Snapshots. I think it's bad. Oh, I don't like Shiva Baby. I know a lot of lesbians love Shiva
Really?
Baby, but I can't stand it. My
You don't
wife and I stand alone on this island of people who did not like Shiva Baby.
like the makeout scene didn't do it for you?
Nah,
Damn, I love that movie.
it's one of those things where like, oh no, she sees the guy, and then the girl she's with is also there. Oh man, what's gonna happen? Of course, like everything wrong is gonna happen.
Okay, a lesbian movie that you love but everyone hates.
Oh, a movie I love but everyone hates. I really love the movie. It's this movie called Bex. I really like that movie. A lot of lesbians hate it, which I totally get because it does have like a lot of tropes in it that I think people don't really like. I think that's like a it's like a big one that I really like that a lot of queer women don't like.
And lastly, best lesbian movie of all time.
I think Saving Face is the best lesbian movie of all time.
I just
I
watched
think
it.
yeah. I think it's delightful. I think it hits the spot of everything a good lesbian movie should do for me personally. But I think there are a lot of acceptable answers. But I think if I was like who like what movie would I be like, this is the most best lesbian movie, I would say Saving Face.
No, I feel bad 'cause when I first watched it like a few months back, got a little bit bored of it, but I think I just wasn't paying attention. But
Mm.
then a couple weeks ago, I was like, I'm gonna sit down and watch it. I'm like, why did I hate it in the first place? Like, I actually just did not give it a chance. I love that movie. It's so like, it's beautiful. I really want to learn more about what made you get into film and television overall. So,
Sure.
like, what was that initial interest that like really started this for you?
So I grew up watching a ton of TV. I just watched a lot of TV as a child, and I watched a lot of movies. And really, I think the notion of it becoming a regular pastime came from the idea that it was kind of like the big subject that my family talked about. We didn't really talk a lot about like what was happening in our days necessarily. The things that we had the most conversations were about the movies we saw or the TV shows we were watching. And so I just kind of grew up in an environment where consuming media and talking about media was very regular. It was very much part of the vernacular, it was part of the daily routine. And it was something that I really enjoyed. So my mom and my brother and I, we would go to movies every week. We still do, actually. We go to like movie theater almost every week all together. And then of course I got really into theater, and there's like another stream of media that I was really into. I think I've just always been, even more than like an artist, I've always been like a consumer and an appreciator of arts and entertainment. And it's something that I found really great joy in, is just talking about movies with people and then trying to talk about movies with people in a way to make them like either invention of cinema. There was, yeah, so since the inception of cinema, there has been queer cinema, and that includes lesbian cinema. There were great movies like Pandora's Box, or I think like Queen Christine, that had queer women characters uh, who were able to have open romances, who were able to kiss women, and it was seen as like a pretty morally neutral thing in a lot of these stories. But over decades, then as the film industry became more industrialized, as people started to realize that that these works were conveying messages, then you had people come in and be like, hey, so actually we can't promote homosexuality. And of course, the assumption that representing queerness was promoting it in a harmful way meant that these groups wanted to come in and totally control how control and conform to heteronormativity. And so then you had the big thing was the Hays Codes is really what kickstarted the repression of many different aspects, but queerness was certainly one of them. And so then you couldn't have any gay or lesbian promotion of gay or lesbian characters. What you could have is maybe you could have something like the Children's Hour, in which eventually, like, that story is all around, that was in like 1961, that was all around a rumor that these two women who were best friends were actually lesbians. They ran a school together. Fun fact, it is based on a play. And in the end, you find out that one of the women, in fact, probably might be a lesbian who was romantically interested in the other woman. But of course, the trauma is just so intense and the feelings are so big that she ends up dying by suicide at the end of the movie. Those were the kinds of lesbian and queer representation that you then saw during this period of like the 50s and 60s, notably. So any representation of queerness had to be seen as as not promoting it, as basically saying that it is very harmful to you. And that didn't really dissipate until the 70s, when we were starting to see where the Hays Codes were starting to disappear, and then you were able to see queerness as more full humans. And TV actually did this earlier than film did. There were like more, you were starting to see some more queer women on TV. I believe, I want to say it was like, I don't know if it was like 1973 or something, where like there was like a TV show character. She was like a psychiatrist, and she was like the first lesbian to be like, I'm a lesbian and there's nothing wrong with that. Like that was in like the early 70s. And film has kind of naturally taken longer than a lot of these other media forms, because film takes a lot longer to put together. There's a lot more money invested. But by the time we got to the 80s, I'd say like 1982 was it 1982? Maybe 1982 with Personal Best is really like the first of like, maybe there's some kind of merit in presenting queer women as people. And 1985 with Desert Hearts is like the first true lesbian romance movie where you got what is kind of like a happy, meaningful ending for the queer women. And so the 80s is when you're starting to see like more diverse representation of queer women. And then, you know, like 40 odd years later, we are where we are now, where people are still trying to find more diverse layers of lesbian representation. But it's been like a very long road.
Yeah, I can remember in that class, there wasn't much like lesbian movies, but I remember going from like people like Ma Rainey and then going to like the Children's Hour and even like ending on like Bound.
Yes. Yeah.
That I feel like are like good three like prominent moments of, you know, sapphic representation. Okay,
yeah, and also there's like things are like different in the US as well. You know, like I mentioned earlier, Mädchen in Uniform, that's like a German film. And in like the 20s and 30s in Germany, and like specifically during the Weimar Republic, there was like a slew of lesbian movies made by Germans pre the Nazis. So internationally, there's like a much different relationship. But it's interesting how like a lot of cinema in the early 20th century was in many ways far more progressively queer than US cinema. But once US cinema became far more institutionalized and closed off, that kind of trickles down to like a lot of other international markets.
I actually wanted to talk to you more about that too. So like representation now, what that looks like. So I guess like starting off, what are your initial thoughts on just the current state of lesbian representation?
It's hard to overstate how like this is by far the best time of lesbian and sapphic representation. There are so many diverse stories, so many different creators, like queer creators making it. And I think part of it is because there are so many ways you can create art now. Like it is not totally solely by these huge these huge studios. Like now people can independently create work that can then get lifted. And so just the ways that people make art and entertainment opens up a lot of doors and has a lot of great diversity in it. However, as with like any kind of representation, people are mostly looking towards the biggest mainstream sources and seeing like, okay, based on what is the most mainstream, what is the state of lesbian representation? What is the state of this representation? And in that sphere, I do think a lot of queer women understandably still feel like lesbian representation is filled with a lot of like sad white femmes and a lot of period pieces. And I say that as someone who loves a sad period piece. I think that film, especially, as I mentioned before, film is like one of the slowest art forms to really change over time. And so you have on TV is just glorious with all kinds of queer women representation. I have like a TV spreadsheet. And at the end of 2023, there were like, like 220 different TV shows that had queer women on it, which is like a huge number. And I think it's hard to be like, actually, it's hard for me to be like, hey, actually, we're in like an amazing time for lesbian representation. But people don't necessarily feel that. It's like when people say like, actually, the economy is in a pretty good state, but people are like, well, I still can't afford this, that, or the other thing. Like, it's hard to be like, to really want to celebrate it when there are a lot of people who don't feel seen and who don't feel like what is out there is for them. And that's kind of part of what my mission is, to be like, okay, well, let me guide you to what is out there and is available, because it's probably far more than you think. So it is absolutely the best time. That doesn't mean that there aren't plenty of avenues where we could see far more diversity in not only like demographics, but like in genre, in kind of storytelling, in medium even. Like I think like a golden age is a bit hyperbolic, but this is the best time. This is the best time to find unique lesbian representation. I think it is mostly on TV, I would say, and probably books. But when it comes to film, certainly there's like a lot that can happen. You know, there's a lot more steps that can take. But certainly, I think TV, if you're looking for like a certain kind of lesbian character on TV, that character is probably going to be out there.
Okay, so I'm curious, what has been your favorite like recent piece of lesbian media that you've seen in like the past year?
It's a good question. I really love Deadlock on Prime Video. I think that's like a really fun show. And that to me like encapsulates a lot of like the kind of interesting, fun lesbian TV shows I think there should be more of just a lot. There are a lot of lesbians, there are a lot of queer women in that area on the show, and it's like very fun to watch. I also have been pleasantly surprised by shows like Monarch Legacy of Monsters. I love when I'm like I love when I'm watching a show and then like, whoa, boom, there's a lesbian protagonist and you didn't know that. I love that stuff. In terms of like movies, I mean, I loved Blue Jean. I loved Anatomy of a Fall. Anatomy of a Fall is one of those movies where like, this is always interesting to me because like Anatomy of a Fall is a great movie. The protagonist is bisexual, but her bisexuality is brought up in the context of the movie in a way where like you don't see her have a queer romance or anything, but you see how her bisexuality affects the way people think about her and look at her and her relationships, and that's like super interesting. And I love stuff like that too, in which queer women, their sexuality is not necessarily tied to a romantic subplot or anything. I mean, what else have I liked? I've seen a lot of stuff that I really liked. What else? I really like genre stuff. So like The Rig is a show on Prime Video that I really like that has like a lesbian character. And it's like a horror fantasy that I think is really cool. And I love Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Like that's a great TV show that completely recontextualizes the Scott Pilgrim universe in like a new way, including the protagonist, the main woman's queerness, which I think is really great. Yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff out there that I really liked.
Good. I know.
Oh, and I mean, I really loved like the Color Purple movie musical as well. That was like my most anticipated movie of 2023, and I was like really excited to see that.
I've yet to see it. I'm so excited. Like
What?
I don't know why. I thought I was gonna see it on opening day, but I just didn't. Whatever. But I'm gonna I wanna go like by myself and just like
Do it. Oh, I
oh
did the same. I did the same too. I was like, I gotta see this by myself. And I didn't. There were like a lot of people in the theater, but it was still like really fun to see.
so obviously like sapphic representation now has still ways to go. What
Yeah.
what do you think we will see in the next like year or two?
I think one thing, it's hard to say. I'm not really good at making predictions. I can say what I think should happen in the next year that I think is like time. I think that stories about queer disabled women have been extremely underwritten. There just aren't a lot out there. And I do think there has been somewhat more of an emphasis on disability in some mainstream projects that I'm hoping will also filter with queer works. I think certainly um, something I'd like to see more of is I think definitely more queer women of color. Absolutely. I think that's something that is continuing to grow. We've had the past couple years have actually there's been like an exponential increase in stories about like indigenous people, and I think that is true for queer indigenous people as well. So I think that's a trend that absolutely I can foresee being bigger, especially with like Lily Gladstone and Killers of the Flower Moon being really successful. I can totally see, and like Reservation Dogs on Hulu and FX. I can see that there's going to be some more interest in stories about queer indigenous people that I think is a possibility. And I also think that we will see more queer women in genres like science fiction and action more. I think that's something that we're starting to see percolate a little bit. There are certainly some action movies in which you start to see maybe some like minor characters who might be queer, but I think maybe we can have more movies like Atomic Blonde, in which the protagonist is a queer woman. I think that's something that absolutely is potential to happen. Yeah, there's a lot. It's hard. There's so many great possibilities, and I don't want to be like, we need to focus on this thing or one thing. We can focus on so many things. There are so many different kinds of queer women, so many different kinds of stories that are out there. And there isn't really, to me, there isn't like a wrong answer. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm so tired of sad white lady period dramas. I'm not like, I think there's plenty of room out there for more sad white lady period dramas, and also like really happy like Asian lesbian rom-coms. Like those are all possible.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this earlier, but I think like an obvious show that like kind of shows like the possibility of like having almost all this, we give our own.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's an obvious one. I should have said like I'm still heartbroken that it's been
I
canceled.
was pissed. I was so
I know.
fucking pissed when I heard about that because I was like, I mean, it had everything. It had
Yeah.
everything, and it's just like I don't think I do rewatch because I think it's time for one.
Totally. It's one of those things where like, God, I want to rewatch it, but then I'm just gonna get sad.
Thinking
I'm just gonna
are
get
they
sad.
still? Did they still greenlight? I think I heard somewhere that they were gonna have like a second season was only gonna be like 4 episodes, some shit like that.
Originally they were, but then they decided to cut. They stopped to cut that, and this happened during the strike, and so people are like, Prime Video was like, oh, because of the strike, it would just be too long to have to like work on the show. But then that doesn't really make a lot of sense. There are plenty of shows that Amazon still held during the strike and are still promising to create more content for them. So it's a bummer. It's a bummer. They originally had a plan for like a final season, quote unquote, but that's since been reneged. So we're not going to have any more A League of Their Own content, unfortunately.
I think
I
more about
know.
it. I'm gonna get sad.
It's hard because this is actually something that queer women complain about a lot. And because when I say, actually, this has been the best time for queer women on TV specifically, queer women are like, but they're canceling all of these shows that have queer women on them. And like that's true to an extent. What these streaming services are really doing is that they canceling the shows that have really strong lesbian and queer women fan bases. There are actually plenty of other shows that have queer women on it, but for some reason, the shows that queer women tend to really love, those are the ones that often get canceled. And I don't necessarily know the statistics behind that. To me, it's kind of reminiscent of back in like, the 2010s when girls really loved the cartoons like Young Justice, and Cartoon Network like canceled those shows because like too many girls liked it and they really wanted a different demographic. Like to me, that feels like reminiscent of that, in which like it's not the shows themselves, it's the demographic they're appealing to or something. I'm not really sure, but I want to be like, yeah, it sucks that a lot of these great shows are being canceled and there's still more that we can watch.
It's just very bittersweet. I did want to make a pit stop, like in theater, because I feel like no one really talks about
Please.
representation in theater. And obviously, as a theater
Yes.
director and just theater buff, I know you're gonna know shit about this. So
Mhm.
I guess so. What has evolution look like in theater?
God, this is something I'm obviously very passionate about as a lesbian in theater. So theater is definitely something where it is an art form that has been considered extremely gay. It's a very gay art form filled with gay people, but that has rarely extended to like gay women and queer women. It is often still very much a gay men's club, something for gay men. And so a lot of the most popular queer plays, they are almost exclusively going to be about gay men. And I think that's something even more true than in film or television. A lot of the most popular queer works are about men in theater than for women. I think the hugest difference in the past 10 years has really been the creation of the musical Fun Home. That is like the very first, I don't know, like big is relative, but very first mainstream successful, like lesbian centered musical. Technically, The Color Purple is like the first mainstream centered lesbian musical, but Fun Home really started a bit of a mini revolution in theater where people were able to see that lesbian stories were profitable and that they had a lot of mainstream appeal. And so since then, you've really seen like a lot of lesbian musicals or musicals that have more queer women, whether it's like The Prom or Jagged Little Mind. I mean, this spring on Broadway, Lempicka, which is like a lesbian musical, is going to open. And I think the power of queer women has only real in theater, I think has only really been activated in the past 10 years, which is not to say that there haven't been great like lesbian playwrights. Paula Vogel has been writing amazing stuff for decades, but the first major, the five lesbian brothers have been creating like really great work since the 90s. But a lot of like these mainstream plays about queer women have only been like very, very recent. And you're also starting to see a lot of theater departments now. They're just like a lot more queer than they were even like 10 years ago. When I was in the high school, I was one of like two out lesbians in my high school theater department. I recently like guest directed at a high school, and I'd say like half of those girls are gay. And that's huge. That means that you now have like more queer women theater artists who are geared towards promoting and being audiences to more queer things. So when it comes to like lesbian and queer theater, that's something part of why I'm very passionate about it as a director is because like there's just not it's people just don't know how much there is out there because a lot of queer women have historically been very much shut out of like telling stories in theater.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. Like, also, I agree with you too. Like, when I was in high school, at the time I was bi, but there were like five outish bi girls in the whole department. But I've always wondered that too, where it's like, this is a very gay field. Why
Right.
do we not see more like gay girls? So I'm assuming like a lot of the plays that you mentioned are also like on like the mainstream, kind of like you said with film and TV. That okay, I don't know that much about theater, but I'm assuming you see that evolution quicker, or you see like you see more progression within like smaller theaters and like smaller plays compared to Broadway. The bigger shows. Is that true, or like what does that look like?
It's certainly like, regional theaters, they will do their own thing. I think like a lot of regional theaters have like done a really good job of trying to promote more queer women plays. But, ultimately in the theater industry, Broadway is what leads the rest of the industry. So if Broadway is not doing something, then audiences aren't going to see as much of it when it gets to the regional level. So that's why it's a big deal. Like when Broadway produced Indecent by Paula Vogel, which is like one of my absolute favorite plays, very beautiful lesbian play. Suddenly, then all of these regional theaters and educational theaters were then going to do Indecent. They were going to and do more queer plays. What are some other plays like Indecent we can do? Similar for like Fun Home. Wow, Fun Home was such a success. What are some other musicals or plays in the pipeline that can be like Fun Home? And so a lot of like these mainstream gay play successes have almost all been written by like white men, like, you know, like Tony Kushner or Harvey Firestein, or you see something by like Tik or like, you know, Douglas Carter Bean or something. And it's really only when like the first couple people are able to really make a breakthrough that then you're able to see like other people like that. Like Lillian Hellman, way back in the 50s, she wrote The Children's Hour. She was like a lesbian playwright who wrote The Children's Hour, but that of course like didn't really have like a happy lesbian end at all. So there have been queer women creating plays for a while, but it's taken I don't know, it's just like taken the theater industry so much longer to like really fully involve queer women in the presentation of queerness on stage. And again, bringing it back to musicals, I think musicals to me is like the easiest way for like quote unquote non-theater people to see this change. But if you look at some musicals that have like a lot of big gay numbers, like The Producers, or musicals that are not necessarily gay but feel campy or something, like Hairspray, for example. Hairspray is a musical in which, in the stage version, they have a lesbian character, and it's like the lesbian gym teacher who constantly makes jokes about like creeping on the students in like the showers and stuff. Or like The Producers, they have like one offhand joke about like the lighting designer being a lesbian or something. Like that has really been a lot of the history of lesbians in musical theater specifically is either as jokes or like side characters. And so once Fun Home was able to burst onto the scene and show that lesbians can be leads, they can win Tonys, that they can be taken seriously, now you're starting to see like a bigger surge of like, well, what if we did like more queer friendly versions of these shows or something? What if we did more lesbian centered musicals? That it really, it's kind of like agonizing, but it can be like decades of work, but it really only takes one piece of work to make a breakthrough for people to realize that actually there are other pieces of art like it that can work.
I think a lot about In the Heights musical movie
Yeah.
when they had, it was Carla and what was her other
Daniela.
name? Daniela, Carla and
Yeah.
Daniela as a couple. But like you said in your TikTok, it was very much like blink and you'll miss it.
Right, like that, like exactly. Like now you're starting to see like, oh, what if we just trickle in the lesbians here? We can also trickle them in some places, which it'll be interesting where musical theater is in 10 years, because the leap of queer women representation in musical theater from 2015 to now has been truly exponential. And I'm curious to see where it'll go.
So we're kind of towards the end. I'm really nosy. So obviously I see that you're happily married to your wife.
Yes.
So I kind of want to hear the story. Like, how'd y'all meet? How'd you propose? Like, I want to hear all the details.
Of course. So, thank you for bringing that up, because I love my wife, and anytime I do a podcast interview and someone doesn't mention my wife, she's like, "Wow, they didn't even. Wow, like, are you even married or anything?" Which I love her so much. We actually met on OkCupid, and
Really?
yes, and her profile said, "Oh my gosh, so much theater." So she's a playwright. She's a teacher and a playwright. And one of her questions on her OkCupid profile was, "Who do you prefer, Sondheim or Andrew Lloyd Webber?" And the answer that she put was just yikes. And that made me laugh a lot, because if you know anything about theater, you know that people bring up this asinine argument over like who is better, Stephen Sondheim or Andrew Lloyd Webber, even though like it doesn't matter because they're very different composers. But I messaged her because that question made me laugh. And so then we bonded over how, as theater people, we know we are contractually obligated to prefer Stephen Sondheim, but we love listening to Andrew Lloyd Webber more. And that's something we very quickly bonded over. And then over the 3 years, we've just gotten closer, and it was great over the pandemic. Like we had just moved in together a couple months before the pandemic started. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, is this too soon to be spending basically like 24 hours a day with this person? But no, it just really reconfirmed how much we just loved being around each other. And so very early on, she told me like the kind of ring she would want for her engagement. And so every time I would come across a ring, I would like show it to her and ask her if she liked it. And eventually she was like, I want this one. So I bought a ring and I had it resized. And I wasn't planning on proposing to her like that soon, maybe in the next couple of months or something. But when I got the ring resized and it was like June of 2021, I got the ring and I was like, I have to propose to her now. Like I want to be your wife now. And so after I got the ring, she went on a walk with our dog and I met her on a trail that was near our house. I wanted it to be somewhere where we could come back and visit it all the time. And I knew, she'd want to be low key. So I met her on the trail and the box that the ring came in was huge and it would look glaringly obvious that I had a ring in my box in my pocket. So I had to put it like by a tree stump. But we were walking by the tree stump and then I picked it up and then I asked her and I said, what I said was, I just can't wait anymore. And then I asked her to marry me. And then of course our dog was there. So she jumped all over me, not knowing what was happening. But my wife, KJ, she said yes. And it was wonderful. And we were supposed to have like an engagement party that her parents hosted up in Boston in November. But once we were there, we decided to just get legally married while we were there. So our engagement party turned into like a surprise wedding reception. Yeah. And then we had our big public ceremony that May. And then depending on who you ask, my mom likes to joke that we've had 3 weddings because for our honeymoon, we went to Thailand and my mom made this like really sweet reception for us with all of my Thai family members.
Yeah. Oh, so
Yeah.
sweet. I have a close friend. Her boyfriend's Thai, and they always talk about how they're gonna have like a huge ceremony in Thailand and all this stuff.
Yeah.
That's actually really beautiful to
Wow.
hear it happen.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. She's amazing.
Like, how long has it been since y'all met to now?
So 5 years. We just celebrated our 5-year anniversary in November, and we've been married for 2 years.
How are you liking marriage life?
I mean, I love being, oh God, it's so cheesy, but I love being married. It's amazing. It's just so nice to have someone who like, like you're on each other's team and who like we're constantly laughing together all the time and have stupid inside jokes and enjoy doing things apart or together. And like now, and we're at a point where we're thinking about like family planning and just like what that would look like. And it's just, I don't know, like I grew up with like divorced parents and like a pretty pessimistic view about like my prospects for like being married, but like it just shocked me how much I just really enjoyed being married and how much I'm just looking forward to it for the rest of my life.
I love hearing just like queer family planning. So I'm like, yes. Like
Yeah,
I'm
it's
looking
fun
for I
stuff.
know I'm looking forward to that.
Yes. Are
Okay.
you dating anyone?
No, sadly. No, sadly, no. I don't want to talk about it. No, I'm kidding. No, I've been single for the past, I feel like 4-ish months. But I have goals this year to just like really focus on myself and like,
Got
focus on like
you.
my hobbies and stuff. So I feel like I've been like
Respect.
dating a lot the past 2 years. I'm like, okay, I need to stop. Like, let me chill.
No, it's
So,
fair. You know what? Sometimes like when you take a break from something and you're able to look back, it just helps you. It just helps figure out like what you really need.
yes. And I feel like even in the past like month, I see that a lot more. I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I see that, but also I'm kind of just like, even if I were to break my goal this year, I have no desire to. Like, I have no desire to go on a dating app right now to like meet up with someone who I don't have a connection with. I'm like, no, I want to have something really intentional. And I feel like if I can't see that in the beginning, I'd rather just move on. I'm like, I'm not. So we have a couple minutes left. So
Yeah.
So I have every guest play our little game. It's called Taste the Sugar. For listeners, I literally did not explain the rules the last time, so I'm going to explain it now. So we have 5 categories and they range from like cute to like a little spicy to some that are kind of just more like harder hitting. So the 5 categories are sweet, spicy, sour to the second power, and bitter. So you choose a category and I will pick a question from one of them.
Sweet, sour to second power. What is the others?
Spicy and bitter.
Let's go sweet.
Sweet. Okay. That's what the last guest did. Nice. I
Oh,
hear
then
it.
you know what? I'm gonna try something different. Let's do sour.
Sour. Okay. What was the scariest part about lesbian sex for you when you first came out?
Oh god, just whether or not I was going to be able to please another woman. That's the scariest thing. It's what it's like. I don't care. Like whatever experience I have, that's what I have. But I got to make sure that I don't that I make this woman happy. So that was definitely like the scariest part. And definitely my first time did not nail it. Didn't nail it at all. Still embarrassed to it. I still think about her and I always like profusely internally apologize. But I think I've like gotten a little better since. Hopefully. Yeah. So that was just like wanting to be sure she's pleased.
I hear you on being scared to please. I feel like I dove in head first, but I was still kind of, ooh, girl, like I don't know. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Literally. Just like, I don't know. Just like all of these episodes of watching the L word meant nothing.
I literally did not. I think even before I even like had sex with another woman, wasn't consuming as much like lesbian media as I do now. So I was literally just like, I'm just gonna guess and just like hope for the best.
Totally, totally.
But I feel you. So Aria, thank you so much for being on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Hope you enjoyed yourself. Do you have any last words that you want to tell listeners?
No, just thank you so much for having me. I feel like it wasn't as eloquent as I wanted to be, so feel free to edit the crap out of me.
Oh, you're good.
Um,
I'm not.
I got a reputation to uphold. Um, because because like a lot of most of the videos that I make are very carefully scripted because I don't want to sound like a fool. Um, so I just appreciate like talking. I just appreciate you talking to me.
Of course, yeah, no. And you sounded fine, honestly.
Okay.
I'm the rambling bitch, so it's totally good.
No. You were delightful, truly delightful.
Awesome. And so where can people find you on social media?
So yeah, you can find me at Aria Velz on TikTok, and on Instagram. And I'm also trying to really get my YouTube channel up and running more to make more long form content. But that's going to be on YouTube. And on YouTube, you can just that my name there is the critical lesbian because that's who I am at heart.
And I will be sure to link all her spreadsheets, her letterbox, and socials in the description. As always, please like and follow the Brown Sugar Pod wherever you listen to your podcast. And we'll see you soon. Stay sweet.